In the heart of the Masai Mara, where the golden grass sways like whispers of ancient battles, 5 lion cubs were born into the legendary Black Rock Pride. Among them was Olobor. From the beginning, he stood out, not for size or strength, but for the fire in his eyes. His gaze carried a sharpness, a spark of defiance, even as a cub. The Black Rock territory, ruled by seasoned males, offered protection, but also a strict code of survival. Olobor grew up surrounded by the roars of his fathers, the discipline of the pride, and the ever-present threat of rival coalitions. The land was vast, dangerous, and filled with silent lessons. He learned to stalk before he could roar, to hide before he could fight. The other cubs, Oloshipa, Oloimina, Lokulup, and Olosiadu, became more than brothers. They were his blood-bound comrades born to share fate. Under the guidance of the older Black Rock males, Olobor's instincts were sharpened. He watched, listened, and remembered. Every scar he saw became a story etched into his mind. Every growl from the horizon reminded him that one day, he too would face what lay beyond. In the safety of Black Rock, life moved with rhythm and order, but deep within, something stirred. The world beyond called, and Olobor, though still young, had already begun to feel it. The safety of home could not silence the pull of destiny forever. By 2021, Olobor and his brothers had grown into powerful subadults. The time for play had ended. The pride that once protected them could no longer hold them. It was time to leave. The call to roam, to conquer, and to become true kings echoed louder than the roars of their elders. Their departure was not dramatic. There was no farewell, no final ceremony. One day they simply walked away, driven by instinct, bound by brotherhood. They crossed into unknown territory, their paws pressing into dust that belonged to others. The world outside the Black Rock. Pride was lawless, and the first to feel their arrival was the Rongai territory. There a solitary male named Floppy Ear reigned. He was experienced, strong, and had weathered many challenges. But the presence of 5 young, united males was a storm he could not hold back. Floppy Ear vanished into the grasslands, leaving his territory and his lionesses behind. Olobor and his brothers did not face resistance immediately. The takeover was not swift, it was uncertain. The lionesses were cautious. They tested the newcomers with growls and distance. Some fled, others stayed, watching. For Olobor, this was his first taste of real power. He was no longer the learner. He had stepped onto the stage of kings. In Rongai, everything was unfamiliar, and the path forward unclear. But the pride began to shift. Slowly, the land whispered, a new name, Black Rock. And among those 5, Olobor's presence grew heavier, more commanding. The journey had begun. Hello guys. If you like our stories and haven't subscribed yet, support our work and subscribe to the channel to help us. Though the territory was theirs, the hearts of the Rongai lionesses were not. The land was unfamiliar, the days uncertain. The bond between the 5 brothers remained strong, but beneath that unity, Olobor began to feel the weight of the unknown. There was no roar of triumph yet, only silence and suspicion. Some lionesses resisted, others ignored them entirely. Olobor, who had been confident in his strength and fire, now faced a different challenge: acceptance. He wandered at the edge of the pride, often met with snarls from females who didn't yet recognize his authority. His brothers shared the burden, but the unspoken question lingered. Were they truly ready? For the first time, fear crept in. Not the fear of battle or death, but the fear of failure. What if the world outside Black Rock was not theirs to take? What if their brotherhood was not enough? At night, under the vast starlit sky, Olobor stared into the dark. The roars of distant lions echoed, but he remained still. The call to conquest had been answered, but now he questioned the cost. Though their fathers had remained behind, their presence lingered like dust in the wind. Olobor remembered them, stoic, scarred, unshakable. In moments of doubt, he drew from the memory of those kings who had once ruled Black Rock with tooth and claw. Their lessons were not gentle. They had taught him through silence, through the weight of a stare, through the pain of correction. But within those trials, a quiet strength had been passed down. The old kings had not just ruled, they had endured. They had protected, bled, and roared until the land knew their names. Olubor's mentor was not a living lion, but the echo of legacy. The discipline of his upbringing returned to him now. He began to patrol more often, challenge more boldly, and push harder for control. The lionesses slowly began to shift. Their resistance faded, replaced by recognition. And though Olubor did not know it yet, a deeper force was awakening within him, a sense of purpose beyond hunger and dominance. He was not just taking territory, he was stepping into a history. A line of rulers had shaped him, and now he would shape the Mara. As the weeks passed, resistance faded. The lionesses, once wary and distant, began to accept the presence of the Black Rock Boys. The territory of Rongai, once ruled by Floppy Ear, was now under the shadow of 5 new kings. It was not a swift victory, but a gradual shift in dominance. Silent surrender to power that would not be denied. With each day, the coalition moved deeper into Rongai. They learned the layout of the land, the hunting grounds, the rivers that carved through the savannah. They marked the territory with scent and presence, patrolling with a confidence that grew with every step. But the price of conquest was never. Though 2 young lions, offspring of the previous ruler, fell during the transition. Their deaths were brutal, a reflection of nature's harsh order. Olubor saw their bodies and felt no pride. It was a reminder that power always came through blood. Among the survivors, 1 young male would rise in time. Olkore, spared from death, forged in fear. The pride was now theirs, but it was only the beginning. Olubor was no longer just a roaming lion. He was now a ruler, responsible not only for brothers but for a legacy. The threshold had been crossed. There was no turning back. Rongai marked the start. But the hunger for more drove the Black Rock Boys beyond its borders. They expanded swiftly, pressing into new territory, Maji Yafisi, forcing out established males known as Maridadi and Kaka. Maridadi, a lion once known and feared, disappeared during the takeover. Some whispered he had fallen under the fury of Olubor's coalition. Others blamed the neighboring Kisinja males. But no truth ever surfaced. The land simply changed hands, and the legend of the Black Rock Boys grew louder. Olubor began to rise within the group, not just as a fighter, but as a figure of fear and admiration. His aggression became legendary. He killed hyenas without hesitation, fought without retreat, and roared louder than any of his brothers. But his strength did not go unchallenged. There were battles that shook the land. In one, Olubor was defeated by 2 rival males, Spiky and Enkuroto. The fight left him wounded and humiliated, a rare moment of vulnerability. But it did not break him. He returned stronger, more cautious, more brutal. Then came another test, Oloemina's battle with Jesse, a lion from a powerful lineage. The attack came suddenly, while Oloemina rested. The 2 clashed in a storm of claws and fury, both emerging, bloodied, their bodies marked with the scars of survival. Yet through all of it, a bond deeper than instinct kept Olubor and Oloshipa side by side. They patrolled together, fought together, endured together. Their connection became the backbone of the coalition. Others respected them, enemies feared them, and even the lionesses came to recognize their dominance. Still, not all was harmony. Tensions sometimes rose, especially during mating disputes. Even Olubor and Oloshipa fought once, short, fierce, and violent. But it wasn't enough to break them. They emerged from the dust still loyal, still united. The wild tested them, but did not destroy them. In the unforgiving world of the Mara, only the strongest endured. And Olubor, scarred and seasoned, was becoming something more than strong. He was becoming unstoppable. The coalition stood at the height of its power. Rongai was secure. Maji Yafisi had been claimed. The Black Rock Boys had not only expanded their reach, they had rewritten the rules of dominance in the Mara. But greatness always draws enemies. And within the pride, cracks began to form. Oloisiadu, once a silent yet loyal presence in the Brotherhood, vanished in the second half of 2021. No blood, no body, no signs of struggle, only his absence, like a ghost drifting out of memory. The remaining four were shaken, though none would admit it aloud. His disappearance was a wound without explanation, a reminder that even kings could vanish without a sound. Despite the loss, Olabor pushed forward. He had no choice. There were threats to confront, prides to defend, cubs to protect. The lions. Salas Figuera and others loomed at the fringes, watching for weakness. And within the pride, tension grew between the males and some lionesses, especially toward Olabor, who was not always welcomed near the females he had helped protect. The days were long, the nights longer. The Mara never rested, and neither did Olabor. His roars were heard at dawn and dusk, a reminder to rivals that the black rock flag still flew high. But inside him, the strain deepened. He was no longer just a warrior. He had become the symbol of a coalition. Every choice, every wound, every patrol, each moment carried the weight of something larger. And as his world grew more dangerous, so did the silence that crept into the shadows. The territory was vast, but even vastness has borders, and on those borders danger waited. In April 2022, that danger arrived in the form of Olope, a bold and formidable rival who crossed into the domain of the Black Rock Boys. Whether it was hunger, ambition, or mistake, no one could say. But his choice sealed his fate. Olope was not a weak opponent. He was fierce, experienced, and determined to stand his ground. The confrontation erupted with brutal force. Olabor and Oloshipa met him head-on. The clash was violent, filled with thunderous blows and raw roars that echoed through the savannah. Olope fought as if possessed, refusing to surrender. But the combined power of the two brothers was too much. When the dust settled, Olope lay broken. His life ended beneath the claws of two lions who would not yield. Olabor emerged from the fight, bloodied but victorious. Oloshipa bore wounds that would take weeks to heal. But something deeper had happened in that battle. A shift. From that moment forward, the bond between Olabor and Oloshipa grew even stronger. Their loyalty became absolute, a force unshaken by time or conflict. Together, they became the true heart of the coalition. Yet that victory came with a cost. Violence left marks on the body, but also on the soul. Olabor began to carry more than scars. He carried memories that didn't fade, faces of the fallen, roars that faded into silence. The land had made him stronger, but it had also made him colder. In defeating Olope, Olabor had passed the greatest test of power. But the question now was, how long could he hold it? With Olope defeated and the coalition's dominance undisputed, a rare period of peace followed. The territories of Rongai and Maji Yafisi now thrived under the rule of the Black Rock Boys. Cubs were born, lionesses hunted in safety, and rival coalitions kept their distance. The balance of power in the Mara had shifted. Olabor and his brothers were now the kings of that golden expanse. Olabor in particular had become a legend. His presence alone stirred silence. His golden mane, scarred face, and unwavering posture turned him into more than a lion. He was a symbol. Travelers and researchers whispered his name. Rangers followed his tracks. Among those who knew the Mara, Olabor was feared, respected, and admired in equal measure. But this reward was not without weight. The expansion of the coalition came at a price. They were often away from the heart of their original pride, especially Rongai. Tensions began to simmer. Some lionesses grew distant, especially toward Olabor. His dominance, once seen as strength, began to feel intrusive. There were days when he approached and was not welcomed. Still, he ruled. He patrolled. He stood beside Oloshipa with pride and power. For a time, the Mara belonged to them. Yet deep down, the stillness of success brought something unfamiliar to Olabor: restlessness. The roar of battle had quieted, but peace was not a song he understood. The reward was his, but the wild was never meant to stay silent for long. The end did not come in a roar, but in slow unraveling. Olabor remained fierce, but the signs of wear were growing. His body bore countless scars. He limped slightly from old wounds. The Mara, which had once welcomed him, had begun to turn. Conflicts re-emerged, not just with rivals, but with time itself. Oloemina developed a limp that never fully healed. Lorkullup fell ill, weakened by what some believed was a snake bite or a slow, creeping sickness. The unity that once seemed eternal began to feel fragile. Still, Olabor moved forward, relentless. But the weight was growing heavier. The bond with Oloshipa remained unshaken, but even that wasn't enough to stop what was coming. In late January 2024, everything changed. Olabor was found dead. There were no signs of a fight, no rivals nearby, no clear cause. Whispers spread quickly. Some said he had been poisoned or killed by humans. Others believed it was disease or natural decline, but no truth came to light. The Kenya Wildlife Service stated it had found no conclusive evidence of foul play. Regardless of the cause, the effect was devastating. Olabor, once the embodiment of power, was gone. His roar silenced, his figure lost in the grasslands. He once ruled Oloshipa, who had stood by him through every conquest, now stood alone. The road back from greatness had begun, and the Mara would never be the same. Olabor's death sent a tremor through the Mara. The king had fallen, not in battle but in silence. And in that silence, questions multiplied. Was he betrayed by humans? Was he simply claimed by the passage of time? No answer came, only shadows. But in those shadows, something powerful stirred. Oloshipa did not crumble. Instead, he rose, scarred, grieving, but unyielding. He gathered what remained: Oloimina, still limping but alive, and Lorkulup, whose health flickered between strength and frailty. Together, they carried forward the weight that Olabor had once borne on his own. The coalition, though smaller and battered, stood firm. The name of Black Rock still commanded respect, but the resurrection was not in numbers, it was in spirit. Olabor's essence lived on in every cub he had sired, every trail he had patrolled, every rival who now roared more cautiously at the borders. The Mara did not forget. Even in his absence, Olabor was present, in stories told beneath starlit skies, in the nervous glances of hyenas, in the sharp silence before dawn. He had become more than a lion. He was legend. And though Oloshipa and Oloimina continued the physical fight for territory, it was Olabor's memory that led them, an invisible force roaring louder than death. His fall was not an end, it was transformation. Now only two remain, Oloshipa and Oloimina, the final Black Rock boys, carry with them the weight of all who came before. Their paws touch ground shaped by blood, triumph, and tragedy. They fight not only for land but for memory, for the ghost of a brother who once roared louder than any. And one day, when new cubs rise and new coalitions form, Olabor's blood will live in them. His courage, carved into the bones of the Mara, will guide them, because legends do not die. They become the soil beneath your feet, the roar that never ends.